Welcome back to Ask the Compound. I'm your host, Ben Carlson. Is $10 million, dollars middle class? Is $6.5 million enough to retire in your 40s? Are you automatically wealthier if you move out of New York City? We're going to answer these questions and more on the show today. Stick around. Our email here is askthecompoundshow@gmail.com. The inbox was ridiculously full this week. I think I say this all the time, but we're hitting new all-time highs. Tons of questions, tons of good ones.
Up and to the right.
Yeah. People love to share all sorts of information, some anonymously, some like to give their name. On today's show, you asked, we answer questions about Nick Maggiulli's new book, The Wealth Ladder. Are inflation-adjusted returns useless? How where you live impacts your wealth? I'm in the Midwest. Duncan's on the East Coast. I think we know what that difference is. Is it prudent to retire in your mid-40s with 100% of your portfolio in stocks? And then how much can you save by moving out of New York City? Remember, everyone in the live chat on YouTube and Twitter, fire off your questions and we'll answer them live on the spot as well. Today's show is brought to you by our sponsors at Betterment Advisor Solutions. If you happen to be thinking there's got to be a better way to grow my RIA, you're not alone with Betterment Advisor Solutions. We do the heavy lifting so you can focus on what matters most, your clients. From improved service that makes asset transition smoother to paper-free, fast onboarding that delights clients on day one, we've built a digital-first platform designed to streamline your operations and make life easier. Now, if you're thinking, wow, they take the paper out of paperwork, you'd be right. Grow your RIA your way with Betterment Advisor Solutions. Learn more at betterment.com/advisors. Investing involves risk, performance not guaranteed. Check this text in the show notes for more. All right, let's do it. Great guest today, huge author, friend, colleague. Let's do it.
Okay. We're setting the bar high.
Yep.
All right. Up first, we got a question that came in on Twitter. Does Nick really think upper middle class goes up to $10 million? That's rich.
All right. Show the tweet here real quick. So Nick's got his different levels. We'll come back to this in a minute. Lower class, working class, middle class. Upper middle class is 1 to 10. Upper class and the super rich. So let's bring Nick on to straighten this one out. Here's straight from the source.
Hey, Nick.
Hey.
Mr. Nick Maggiulli, the author of the new Wealth Ladder. Great
Thanks
book.
for having me on.
Good stuff. All right, Nick, you came up with all these different levels for your book, and you posted it on social media, and it went kind of crazy. A few people tagged me, and that's where kind of the questions went. I'm guessing most of the people that were up in arms about your numbers and your descriptions didn't read the book in the first place, because you provide context and a little more to it, but tell us how you came up with these values and these levels in the first place.
Can I just say that first, Nick, you're very good at this like kind of casual rage baiting that you do on social media, where like you say these things and you're very like mild-mannered about it and like, oh no, I'm just pointing it out, I'm just saying, and then the comments are just unhinged. It's very good for engagement.
Yeah,
social media takes the bait every time, right?
You got to walk the line on this, and like saying something like, oh, by the way, these are the new economic classes. Oh my God, people go crazy, right? And so it even did. I knew it was going to do well. I didn't think it was going to do that well. Like I thought it would get like, maybe 1,000 likes maybe, and it just did. It went way crazier than that. So, when I came up with this, and the idea is there's a few things you want to do. You want to say, does the data fit this model well, A, and then B, like you want to come up with a framework that's useful and like memorable. I think that also matters. And then C, like the thing that I think is the most, the biggest pushback, which is actually true, is I try to make it location agnostic. So if you have, 1 to 10 million, you're upper middle class anywhere in the U.S.
That's good, because we have a question on that coming later, right?
Yeah, because obviously if you're in New York City, like I would say if you have like $8 million, like yes, you're doing well, you live a great life, but I wouldn't say you're upper class in the sense of you're flying private, you have your own driver. Like a lot of the things that I think the upper class could afford to buy, I don't think people in the upper middle class buy. And so, yes, you can have your nice apartment in New York City and maybe you have a vacation home or a lake house or something that's very nice too, but you don't necessarily have the things that people in the upper class have.
So your definitions and ranges were trying to be very like inclusive of a lot of different groups of people.
Yeah, I mean, like if you have $5 million in Alabama, you're upper class, right? Like there's no debate there. If you're in a rural area and you have a bunch of money, you can build insane housing and have all these toys and all this stuff that you're not going to need, but you don't have access to a lot of these other things. And so when I think of the upper class, I think about a lifestyle that most people in the upper middle class would not recognize. And so that's flying private. That's things like, you know, I said, you're hiring a lot of people. You have like teams of people that work for you, not just like, oh, I pay the maid to come over, or I have an au pair. Like that's upper middle class stuff. I'm talking about like, you have teams of people. You maybe have your own private chef. You have I think that's more of the upper class lifestyle. And I think you can easily start to afford that once you get into 10 million plus. And just one last thing on this. There's a guy named Preston Holland. He actually talks about, you know, private travel and private jet travel. And he found in his data that the median, kind of where the bell curve shows up in terms of where people actually start doing private travel, where it's most common, is around $20 million in assets or $2 million in annual income.
So wait, what's 20 million as a percentile? So that's the top 0.5% or something?
Yeah, at least, right? It's very,
So
it's a very small percentage. Yeah, it's over the top 1%. So it's probably the top 0.5%, right? So
do the people on social media who rent a plane just for pictures, do they count?
No, they do not.
All right.
So, but you see, I put it out there. It's obviously controversial. I know not everyone's going to agree with it. Like location, I agree that makes sense. Age
I know what you're doing.
matters too. Yeah.
So Daniel, you also broke down in your book how many people fall into each category, and you can see at your different levels, it's a small amount, right? That and this is globally. But which is kind of funny because
it's got global on the first two columns are global. The right two columns are the U.S. households.
Yep.
And so when I talk about this, I always round them just to make it easy to remember. Like, oh, level 1, that's 20%. Level 2 is 20%. Level 3 is 40 instead of 43. And then I just say level 4 is 18% because obviously asset prices have gone up. This was 2022, 2023 data. So I say 18% in level 4, and then the top 2% is level 5 and 6. That's like my approximation for this. And it's pretty close, and it's easy to remember. So yeah, when I look at that, I'm like, hey, 18% of the U.S. is in level 4, and it's not something that's I think is talked about a lot.
But you wrote this post recently about how like the death of the Amex Lounge, saying that like there's so many more people in the upper middle class, and while it doesn't really feel special anymore, and I think that's why it's important to point out that you go up to like 4 decimal points on the upper class, right? Because it's so few people, but once you get into that upper middle class that you define, then you want to be there too, and you realize like, wait a minute, I don't get to do the private chefs and the private jets and all this stuff, and that's where the psychology comes in, obviously.
Yeah, so that's where it's coming from. I think people that are doing very well have $5 million, you know, in like a place like New York City may not feel that they have this exclusive level of wealth that someone in, let's say, level 5.
So in the chat, someone asked, and I wanted to get into like how the net worth stuff works, but someone says, listen, there are many more millionaires if you include home equity. But if you drop home equity out of it, then the number drops. So just tell us exactly what these numbers cover.
This is all net worth. Everything I've done is total net worth. I think, of course, you're like, well, home equity doesn't count. Well, yes, if everyone liquidated their homes at the same time, a lot of this would disappear. But I think you have to count it. And if you sell your home and then you have that liquid, that's real wealth. We just have to assume that you can sell it at the market price. I think that's the only assumption here, that things are slightly inflated. Outside of that, we're doing a whole net worth. If you do just look at liquid net worth, the number of people in level 4, and it goes from 18% to just 7%. There's only about 7% of U.S. households have $1 million in liquid, or more assets, right? So it's a much smaller percentage. And by the way, that liquid number would also exclude retirement accounts. So if you say, hey, take my net worth, subtract home equity and retirement accounts, how many people still have $1 million? It's only 7% of households. I think there's a good amount of money in retirement accounts and a good amount in home equity. So it does change it a little bit.
To be clear, if you buy a house with a mortgage with 10% down and the house is $700,000, your net worth doesn't immediately go up by that amount. You have to you subtract the debt.
I would say you would. Yeah, so whatever money you had to buy the home, right? The asset column goes up by 700,000, and then the mortgage goes up by whatever, it's 630. That's the 90%, and then you also have the home equity, which is the other 70. So you're on the day you buy the house, your net worth did not change at all, right? It just kind of moved around, and then obviously if the value of the home goes up, that does change your net worth, though.
Okay.
Very important question in the chat. They asked, why does Ben look so tan? That's because in Michigan, we only have nice weather for 3 or 4 months out of the year, and I take advantage of it, and that's why I'm at the lake this week. All right, let's do another question.
Okay. We should do one with you on the boat sometime. You got a good hot spot?
Service.
That'd be fun.
It's like driving a big, square-shaped couch or rectangle-shaped couch. Everyone could come.
All right, up next, we got... There's something about inflation-adjusted returns that's always confused me. Why is it standard in the finance industry to project inflation-adjusted returns instead of inflation-adjusted expenses? To me, it makes more sense to assume that if I have $50,000 in annual expenses, I should project a 3% annual increase, since that's more in line with how life actually works. I understand that inflation erodes buying power, but it doesn't literally reduce my returns. It does, however, literally increase my expenses. So how did inflation-adjusted returns become the industry standard? Love the show. Thanks for your help.
All right, this one seems like splitting hairs, but I figured you would appreciate this one, Nick. So I say, on the one hand, like, you want to use real returns to help compare across different market environments across history, right? Because, like, nominal returns in the 1970s were actually okay, but on a real basis, they were dreadful because inflation was so high. I think, on the other hand, I agree with this person that your personal inflation rate matters way more than the aggregate level from the government. So I do think this is kind of right up your alley. So what is your take on, like, real versus nominal when it comes to things like financial planning?
Yeah, you're right that your personal inflation rate is the one that matters, but let's just make I know they threw out $50,000 as a number. Let's just use 100 to make the math even easier. Let's say your portfolio is throwing off $100,000 a year in income and you have $100,000 in expenses, right? Okay, let's assume that there's 3% inflation. So the next year, your expenses should be $103,000. If your portfolio got a nominal return of, let's say, 6%, it is now, throwing off, let's say $106,000, right? In income. So you're getting $106,000 in income to buy the $103,000. You actually made $3. We can net all that out. It's as if you had on an inflation adjusted return is only 3%. It's as if you had the 3. That's not exactly how it works, but it's close enough that it kind of gets at this where we net it out because it's convenient. And you're right. The only expenses that matter are your own. So just track that. And that's how you compare to inflation. I think it's a shorthand. It saves time. And that's why we do it.
Yeah. And it's kind of like 6 of one, half dozen of the other. But to your point, that's why in actual financial plans, like the plans that our advisors are building for people, they're taking the actual spending levels that people have, and that's what they're using. Is they're not using the government inflation, and a lot of times to build in a margin of safety, you might even use a higher inflation rate just to give yourself a little bit of leeway and stuff. But so yeah, I think he's got the right mindset here, but you don't need to completely hate on real returns. Like I still think it kind of helps to understand that, especially when you're trying to figure out what things look like across time. But I also think, so if you look at the 1930s, there was deflation, right? Which actually would have made real returns better. I don't think that made anyone feel any better. That real returns were like 2% per year better or something because we had deflation. So anyway, very theoretical question, but I thought you would enjoy that one. All right, let's do another one.
That was good.
Okay. Up next, we got a question from Andrew. When Ben talked about the perfect level of wealth, there's one huge factor that I'm having trouble quantifying: where you live. I live in a high cost of living area, and although I'm doing really well by any imaginable metric, with a $2.5 million net worth in my mid-40s, I can't help but get the sense that it's not enough based on where I live. How do you think about wealth through the lens of where you live?
Great question. And this is something pushback we always get, and Nick, probably why your ranges are so wide to account for this. But a few weeks ago on the show, someone asked a question, what's the perfect level of wealth? And they caveated it by saying, not to the point where wealth makes you too stressed out and it becomes more of a chore than anything. And my number, I'm curious if you have it, Nick, I said, based on experience of dealing with clients, it's like somewhere in the $7 to $10 million range. So your upper middle, like the upper level of your upper middle class, that was where I landed based on experience. And I had a few advisors at Ritholtz tell me like that it's true. Dealing with those clients, they're the ones, unless they really think they want to get to that private level, and they have the FOMO of not being at those levels. That's the point. Because at a certain level, and I said, I don't know, 20, 25 million, that's when the money becomes almost a job to you in terms of charitable giving and generational planning, all this stuff. So I'm curious, Nick, am I in the right ballpark for you for perfect level of wealth, stress-free wealth?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it depends on location a lot. So, for example, if you're in a high cost of living city, I think you have to be upper level 4, which is exactly what you said, 7 to 10 million. I think if you're in a lower cost of living area, you still need to be in level 4, but in the United States, but you can probably be a bit lower. Where that is exactly is debatable. I actually think in a lot of Europe, you can actually be in like upper level 3 and be in the same sort of boat, only because they have such a better social safety net. And, like the healthcare, like I think if you actually look at the research, why do people acquire so much wealth? Why are they so worried? Healthcare, unknown healthcare. Imagine you get hit with a random disease and you're 60 years old. You're still 5 years away from Medicare. You're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to pay for this thing? And it just costs so much money. And that's the thing that people worry about, especially in the US. You don't have to worry about that as much in Europe. I think the costs are not as crazy. So because of that, I think that's where you can be at a different wealth level and still have a very, very good life and not as stressed. And so I do think it is location dependent and based on the society, et cetera. But
Yeah,
I would agree with you.
You've lived in New York for a while, so you understand this firsthand. What it's like to live in a high cost of living city, and maybe that's your point. Like the levels just get bumped up a notch, and I think psychologically it's never been harder to keep like the whole keeping up with the Joneses thing, because it's not just in your neighborhood or your area, it's everywhere with social media and such. But I just have to imagine that the psychological wealth hurdles are way bigger in high cost of living cities, because you think, gosh, I'm making a pretty darn good living here by any standard of anyone else in the country except this place.
Yeah,
right?
And so this person in particular, mid 40s, 2.5 million. We're going to talk. We have another question later which looks at this as well. But 2.5 million, mid 40s. You're in the top 7% of U.S. households for that age range, right? So you're
Top
doing
what,
well.
7%? Yeah.
Top 7% roughly, right? So that's because that's where you would put. Yeah, that's exactly the 93rd percentile is 2.1 million, and then the 94th is 2.5, a little over 2.5. So you're basically top 6%, let's say. So you're doing well, but you're right. Like there is, and I think this gets at that blog post, there is a lot of angst around the upper middle class, where there's a lot of competition for a lot of scarce resources. So you can have a bunch of money and you're like, yeah, if I lived in a low cost of living area, I could be crushing it. But because I live in this area with so many other people that are doing well, two high income earners, let's say, it's really tough to kind of compete with a lot of these households. And that's where that angst is coming from, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, I understand it. Like it's still okay to call yourself wealthy, just on a relative basis. It might not feel like it because of where you live.
And you already alluded to this, but just I think it's worth reiterating. In the introduction to your book, you have this chart that shows that 43% of the world is in level 2, and 43% of U.S. households are in level 3. That's like that to me kind of stood out. That's
right. Compared to the rest of the
astounding.
world, almost everyone in the United States is rich. The majority of people in the United States are rich, but it's a
anyone in level 4.
We don't have free healthcare.
Yeah. Anyone in level 4 in the U.S. is in the top 1% globally. If you have $1 million in net worth, that's the top 1% on a global level. Obviously, people don't care about that much, but that is the case there.
All right, let's do another one.
Okay. Up next, we got. I'm 45 and have a family with 2 toddlers under age 5. Currently, we have $6.5 million in liquid assets and a house that's fully paid off. I have the
Big time
assets,
not to brag of the day.
Yeah. I have the assets 100% in equities, mainly in index ETFs like VTI and QQQ. The plan is to live the rest of my life on the capital gains and dividends from the $6.5 million, hoping to not use more than 4% a year. 4% rule. No one in the family plans to go back to work. Is the 100% equity allocation too risky? My thought is that even if the market is down 50% tomorrow, we still have $3 million to live on, and eventually the market will recover.
Upper middle class, Nick?
Oh, yeah, definitely upper middle class.
All right, so shameless plug, tomorrow on The Unlock, I talked to Bill Bengen, the creator of the 4% rule. Nick, this was interesting. I'll give a little teaser. He told me that if you look at the past 90 years or so, the average actual safe withdrawal rate, right, because 4% is supposed to get you through the Great Depression or the 1970s. He said it's actually been more like 7% over the last, maybe he said this over the last 50 years.
Dave Ramsey was right.
Yeah, yeah, right.
We're going to find out like 10 years from now, we're going to be like, Dave Ramsey was right. We could have been pulling 8 this whole time.
So do you have where this guy falls on the percentile of wealth as well?
Yeah, I actually
million?
I have a chart. I think the next chart is the one, the net worth one. So that black dot is the 98th percentile, which is at 4.5 million. And this person's at, let's say 6.5. Let's say their home's worth $1 million. I have no idea. They're between the 98th and 99th percentile. 99 would be at, over, for his age group, like over 8.8 million, right? So it's like this person's near the 99th percentile. They're obviously doing very well. My take on this is like, why don't you just put at least $1 million in treasuries? Like, I understand that's going to create more taxable income, which is not great. I understand what if it goes down 50%? It's just, what are you going to lose out by having, $1 million in treasuries and 5.5 million in S&P versus, all 6.5. You're like, oh, I'm going to lose out on some upside. Yes, but like the downside risk, if we go through, God forbid, another Great Depression, you can see assets go down 80, 90%. I don't think that's going to happen, but it has happened. And so I think it's a really weird thing to be like, yeah, just hold it all in that, especially in the Qs. Like the Qs can actually go down that much in a quick amount of time.
They were down 80% after the dot-com bubble, 85% or something like that. And I know you've done work on the 4% rule just like I have, and think about through the lens of like a fire as well. But yeah, the idea where they say, well, even if the market's down 50%, we still have $3 million to live and the market will eventually recover. Like, yeah, that's easy to say at all-time highs. Try it again, even if the market's down 30%. And then you go from losing not percentages, but losing real dollars, right? And oh my gosh, I lost $2 million because my portfolio was down a third or whatever. So yeah, there's no point. You've already won the game. Like, take a little bit of money off the table to give yourself a margin of safety if things go worse than expected. There's no, yeah, you're right. There's not much downside there.
Yeah.
I just thought it was such a good illustration of Nick's point in the book about wealth being relative. That they're like, yeah, I mean, if I lose $3 million, it's $3 million.
And it's also important to remember that the 4% rule stuff, that's based on 30-year projections. This could be a 40, 50-year retirement, maybe longer.
Yeah.
If we keep solving diseases and stuff and healthcare gets better. So, yeah, just you still need to grow the money, obviously, because you have a very long time horizon, but you have a lot of money. And even if, you're right, Nick, if it's 5 million compounding instead of 6.5, you're still going to be just fine. Just having some sort of margin of safety or whatever. Take 5 years worth of expenses and put it into T-bills or treasuries or whatever it is.
T-bills. I would say keep it low duration. I mean, I know right now if rates start dropping, you want it to be long duration, but you never know. Rates can keep going up. I'm unsure about the future there. But yeah, I agree. It's one of these things where like you just have to be like, I think the problem is not like, oh, even you're planning, oh, like the market goes down 50% in a vacuum and like everything's fine. Usually there's a lot of other consequences that happen that you would not have foreseen. Like maybe there's what causes the market to go down 50%? Is there something else in your life that could go wrong? I think people are like, oh, what if you have someone that loses a job or something? I don't think that's the case here, but you have to think about what are the other ways that you can get hit besides just asset prices being cut.
Well, if they're super safe with the vast majority of their money, just think about how big their fund money account could be.
Right?
I mean...
Yeah, exactly, right. Yeah, carve
like
out 5 or 10%.
What's 1% of... Yeah, I mean...
Duncan just wants them to put some of their money into Oatly to build up that shareholder base.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do another question.
Okay, up next we got one from Daniel. I'm 39, my wife is 36, and we live in Brooklyn with our 2-year-old. We both work in tech sales. I'm an executive at a VC-backed startup, and she works at a FANG. Our combined income is $600,000 to $650,000 with downside protection around $500,000. I don't quite understand that part of it. I'm curious to see what you guys think that means.
I think just with the bonuses and like that's like salary. I think.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And the other stuff is bonuses, probably.
Okay. We work remotely and want at least one more child. We're debating leaving New York City. A close friend is offering us an off-market opportunity on a 4,000 square foot home on half an acre in a top school district outside Philly. It's beautiful, significantly more house for the money, and we would save $30,000 to $40,000 annually just by avoiding New York taxes. The catch is that my startup role is volatile, and I worry that relocating to the Philly area might make me less attractive to future New York City-based opportunities. But on paper, this feels like an amazing chance to improve quality of life and build wealth. How would you weigh this decision? Are we overthinking the career implications of leaving New York City?
Well, this is the other part of the high cost of living debate is that one of the reasons it costs so much is because there are better opportunities for employment and making more money. Now, maybe that has changed a little bit in the remote work environment, but I think companies have tried to right-size a lot of those things. So I have plenty of thoughts on this, but Nick, I'd like to hear from you because you and I have had a lot of discussions about how expensive it is to live in New York City, and you've written about this. Do you think the peace of mind would be a real thing, especially at this stage of life where they have a young family?
Yeah, I really do value that, and I don't know because I think I need to know their assets too. I think that helps. They didn't give that, just their income, which is not enough, I think, right now, because I want to know, like, let's say that startup job does, go away, and then it takes this person some time to find a remote role, and maybe they aren't getting paid the same amount. I'm thinking through like the downsides. like obviously it's going to be much cheaper, so they can afford that lifestyle, and they would have wiggle room even with that extra 30 to 40K in savings. And I bet they're already saving some money, you know, with how high their income is. So I think it gives them a ton of wiggle room. I do agree, though, that the opportunities are something you can't really overlook, because, yes, it costs more to live in the New York City area, but I think it's, at least in my, I mean, once again, N equals 1 here, but like in my case, like I've spent more money than ever living, but I've also had more opportunities to meet more people and do stuff because of that. And so I wouldn't have had those opportunities if I had been somewhere else. So just people coming through, like it's easy to meet friends. Everyone always comes to New York City. So I personally like that. So I can meet up with people that I maybe haven't seen in a few years. They'll like drop me a line. I'm like, yeah, let's go meet up or something. So, but that's it. It's really what you value. If you want, I think if I was here in this situation, I would probably lean towards moving to Philly, but I do see the risk here.
And I don't think you do it just for tax reasons. I think you do it for quality of life. And maybe you say, hey, listen, I live in New York City, but I'm not even taking advantage of all the great stuff there is to do because I have a family. So I don't do it simply for tax reasons, I don't think. I will make the case for Philly. I lived in Philly for a semester in college. My first exposure to the markets was in Philadelphia. I worked for an investment analyst as an intern. It was like an internship program for a semester. Lived with 5 of my friends in Old City. Philadelphia has some very nice suburbs, and the downtown area is spectacular because of all the history there. So I'll make a strong case for Philly. I'll pound the table. I almost decided to live there after college. But I don't know. I know some people who live in Philly and commute to New York occasionally.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. They're not talking about moving to Wyoming.
Yeah, it's not that far away.
You can get an hour and 15-minute train from Philly to New York City.
Yeah, if you realize, oh my gosh, I've completely screwed up, you could always potentially rip the Band-Aid off and move back. So I think the reasons that you're thinking about doing this actually make sense because of the family, and if it turns out that your trajectory is completely changed, you could always reverse the decision. I don't think that's that big of a deal, but I'm just curious, like, Nick, if you tried to run the numbers, like, how much could you honestly save moving out of New York City to some place? And obviously people always say, like, well, I'll just keep my income the same, and I save on taxes. Like, I mean, what are we talking here? Like a 20% premium, 15% premium? It's got to be a pretty large number.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what your income is. I mean, I think it's like, okay, you avoid New York City, that's 4%, depends on the state tax difference. I don't know what Pennsylvania's is. I know Jersey and New York are roughly similar in terms of state tax, so that doesn't really save you. There's just trade-offs there. I mean, the worst case scenario is they move to Philly, he loses the startup job, that's bad, and then he gets another role, but it's like you have to come in 5 days a week to New York, and then he has to commute an hour and a half each way, you know, assuming like a 15-minute ride to the train or something, right? So you start running that, and that's like, yeah, that would be really tough for quality of life reasons, because now you're taking 3 hours out of your day commuting, which is no one really wants to do. So I think that's the worst case scenario. I'm trying to imagine what's the worst case scenario. He stays in New York, he still loses the startup job, and then he has to find another one, right? Like, you know, so...
See, Nick, you've made all these calculators on your website. You need to make like a leave New York City calculator.
Yeah, oh my gosh. There's so many factors. The problem with all these calculators, even with my rent versus buy calculator, there's so many inputs, and like you try and control for everything, and people are like, well, you should control for this. I'm like, yeah, but that's like a very weird specific use case, and I don't want to throw it in there and add more confusion for most people just to serve your particular edge case. So
it is hard to get everything right. So I have one more question for you. So you been sending out copies of books to people, and you send this $2 bill in a little sleeve as a bookmark, which is a cool idea. We have a family friend who sends $2 bills to the kids every year, and they hoard them. Like my daughter has a whole pile of them, and they look at it as more like a novelty. Like they're never going to spend it. But this got me thinking that like we should have other weird denominations. Like there should be a $7 bill. And I felt like wouldn't it be great to just go to a bar and buy a beer for $7? But then I also got to thinking, you know how they have the forever stamps that you buy and you pay a little premium and they're just good forever?
Yeah.
Like there should be a $7 bill where you pay a premium for it, and for the rest of your life, that $7 bill buys a beer, regardless of what the price of the beer
forever
is.
Beer, forever
yeah,
bill.
So 21st birthday.
Is it location dependent?
Well, yeah, New York, it's like $35.
No, you would price it to the most expensive market, and then it's the forever bill.
You know what? This sounds like a good idea for a beer company to do. They can basically just have a coupon that you can use for life.
If we took the forever stamp model and applied it to anything within reason, Nick, what would you choose? Like, what would be the thing? Because for me, it's beer. Like, on the 21st birthday, you give someone, hey, here's 3 $7 bills. There's your first 3 beers on me.
I mean, everyone's going to say something relative to their consumption basket. Like, I want, like, what thing do I want to, like, lock the price of forever, right?
Someone in the chat says Fiji water.
No, I would probably, the price of red meat or something. I'd be like, that's the thing I probably
you go.
consume the most of, right? So I'm like, I'm going to lock that indefinitely, and that would be amazing. If 50 years from now I'm still spending, $60 on a nice ribeye or $70 on a nice ribeye, that would be incredible.
For Duncan, it would be hats.
It'd be coffee and hats.
No, coffee.
Sure,
Yeah, that's true.
hats.
Coffee would be a good one. Forever coffee.
Yeah.
Just a thought. When my finances are someday. All right, everyone, check out Nick's new book, The Wealth Ladder.
Thank you.
Out now. Leave him a review on Amazon. Check out all of our other videos at The Compound. New Animal Spirits up today. New Compound and Friends on Friday. Great chat with Michael Semblis from JP Morgan dropped on Monday. Subscribe if you haven't. Leave a 5-star review. Send us your questions. askthecompoundshow@gmail.com. Or show up on the live stream. Ask them here. We appreciate everyone here watching live. See you next time.
See you, everyone.
See ya.